They said it was just landscaping work. But the ground under our park never looked the same again. Some nights, the soil still moves, like something underneath is breathing. Last week, the HOA president showed up at my door, holding a shovel, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She said, "We need to dig it back up." And now, I can't sleep, because whatever they buried out there wasn't supposed to come back. Hey guys, welcome back to HOA Stories, where we uncover the wildest, weirdest, and most twisted things that happen behind those perfect white fences and manicured lawns. I'm Ryan, and I live in one of those perfect neighborhoods, the kind that wins awards for having matching mailboxes and smiling neighbors. But behind those smiles, there's something dark buried under our park. If you've ever hated your HOA, or you've ever wondered what they're really hiding, then hit that subscribe button right now. And if you're brave enough, type BOHOA in the comments to show you're one of us. Let's dive into this story. I still remember the first day I noticed it. The sound of digging at 2 a.m. At first, I thought it was raccoons, or maybe some late-night maintenance thing. But when I looked out my window, I saw flashlights moving behind the park fence. 5 or 6 shadows, all wearing dark jackets. And one of them was Margaret, the HOA president. Now, Margaret isn't the kind of woman you forget. She walks like she owns the sidewalk, and she probably thinks she does. Her lipstick never smudges, even when she's yelling at you about your trash bins. But that night, she wasn't yelling. She was whispering. They were digging. Fast, quiet, focused. And then, something heavy hit the ground with a metallic thud. I heard one of them say, "That's deep enough." The next morning, the park was closed for renovations. A neat little HOA sign stood right where the digging happened. "Do not enter, safety work in progress." But the weird thing, they didn't build anything. No workers showed up. No fences, no cones. Just dirt. Freshly packed dirt that sank in the middle like a grave. I didn't say anything, not yet. Because in an HOA neighborhood, you learn early, curiosity can cost you fines, threats, or worse. But every day after that, I noticed small changes. The sprinklers near the park stopped working. The grass turned darker, not dead, just darker, like it was feeding on something. And at night, dogs refused to walk past that area. They'd bark, growl, and pull away like they smelled something they shouldn't. A week later, I was walking back from work when I saw 2 men unloading more dirt. One of them nodded at me and said, "Board orders. We're reinforcing the soil." Reinforcing? Since when does dirt need reinforcement? I tried to act casual, but my curiosity was burning holes in my brain. That night, I walked to the park again. No one was there. The moonlight hit the grass just enough to see the outline of that same sunken patch. I took a stick and poked it into the ground. It went down, deeper than I expected, and when I pulled it back out, there was a strange, dark residue on it. Not mud. Something oily. Metallic. That's when I heard a voice behind me. "You shouldn't be here, Ryan." It was Tom, the HOA's maintenance guy, the one who always smelled like gasoline and secrets. He was holding a flashlight, aiming it right at my face. "Just taking a walk," I said, pretending to stretch. "At midnight?" he asked, stepping closer. I shrugged, forcing a smile. "Couldn't sleep." He tilted his head. "Neither could they." Before I could ask what he meant, he turned the flashlight off and walked away. No footsteps. Just gone. The next morning, there was a new sign on the park gate. "Area under investigation. Do not enter." But the board never mentioned what kind of investigation it was. No police. No reports. Just silence. Until last night. Someone knocked on my door. It was Margaret, in her red coat, holding that same clipboard. And behind her stood Tom, with a shovel. She smiled that tight, polite HOA smile. "Ryan, we need your help," she said. "There's something under the park that belongs to us, and we want it back." What would you do if your HOA president showed up at your door, asking you to help dig up something they buried? I didn't want to open the door that night, but Margaret kept knocking, slow, steady, polite, like she already knew I'd cave. When I finally did, she smiled that tight HOA smile again. Behind her, Tom held his shovel like it was part of the uniform. "Ryan," she said softly, "you're the only homeowner we trust for this." Trust. That word felt heavy coming from her mouth. I crossed my arms. "Trust me with what exactly?" Margaret looked around, making sure no neighbors were watching. Then she leaned closer. "It's a time capsule. Something the board buried years ago. Records, letters, documents, nothing serious." Tom's hand tightened on the shovel. His eyes didn't move from mine. "If it's just papers," I said, "why dig it up at midnight?" Margaret's smile didn't fade. "It's a delicate matter, and it needs to stay private." I should have said no right there. But the way she said, "private," made my brain itch with curiosity. So I grabbed my jacket and followed them to the park. The night air was cold and still. Only the hum of distant sprinklers broke the silence. The moon hung low, painting the grass silver. When we reached the park gate, Tom unlocked it with a small key, one I didn't know even existed. Inside, the smell hit me first, wet earth mixed with something metallic, like rust and rainwater. Margaret pointed to the same spot I'd seen them digging before. "There," she said. "Start there." Tom handed me a spare shovel. I hesitated. "Shouldn't we wait till morning?" "No," Margaret said firmly. "It must be done tonight." So I started digging. The soil was softer than it should have been, too loose, like it had been turned over many times before. Tom joined in silently, the scrape of metal on dirt echoing through the park. Margaret stood over us, her red coat glowing under the streetlight, arms crossed, clipboard in hand, like she was supervising a neighborhood cleanup. After a few minutes, my shovel hit something solid. A dull thud. Tom and I stopped. He crouched down, brushing away the dirt with his gloved hands. A box started to appear, metal, rectangular, about 2 feet long. Old, rusted, but not ancient. It looked more like a storage chest than a time capsule. Margaret's breathing quickened. "Careful," she whispered. When we finally lifted it out, the box made a strange sound, a faint hiss, like air escaping. I stepped back. "You sure you know what's in there?" She didn't answer. Instead, she took a small key from her coat pocket and knelt beside the box. Her hands trembled as she turned the lock. It clicked. The lid creaked open. And inside wasn't paper. It was a small wooden doll, half-rotted, its face cracked, eyes painted black. Around it, several sealed envelopes and a folded piece of fabric that looked like a child's blanket. "What the hell is this?" I asked. Margaret stared at the doll like it was an old friend. "It belonged to a family that used to live here," she said softly, "before the HOA took over the land." Tom's jaw clenched. "That family shouldn't be mentioned," he muttered. I looked between them. "You buried a doll? Why?" Margaret closed the lid halfway. "It was part of a settlement." Her tone made my stomach twist. "Settlement?" I repeated. "You mean like a legal thing?" She shook her head slowly. "Not exactly." Before I could push further, Tom grabbed the box. "We need to move it," he said. "Now?" Margaret nodded. "To the clubhouse." I followed, my mind racing. A doll, a blanket, envelopes, buried in the park for years. And they wanted it back now. As we walked through the park, I caught something strange in the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement near the swings. A shadow. Small. Child-sized. Gone in a blink. I froze. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Tom didn't turn. "Keep walking." When we reached the clubhouse, Margaret unlocked the back door. Inside, the lights were dim, the air heavy with the smell of polish and old coffee. Tom set the box on the meeting table. Margaret closed the blinds and looked at me. "What you saw tonight stays between us," she said. "Yeah," I said slowly, "but you owe me an explanation." She hesitated, then pulled an envelope from the box. It was yellowed with age, the name Warren Family written in faded ink. "This was their property," she said. "They built the first version of our park before we had rules, before we had an HOA." I frowned. "And They refused to sell their land when the development started, she said. Things got complicated. Tom muttered something under his breath. Sounded like bloodline. Margaret shot him a warning look, then turned back to me. The family disappeared one night. The lot was sold. We don't talk about it anymore. I felt a chill crawl up my neck. So this doll was part of their daughter's belongings, she said quickly. We buried it to put the past to rest. I looked at the doll again. Its cracked paint seemed to smile. One glassy black eye stared back at me. Put the past to rest, I repeated. Then why dig it up? Margaret's voice dropped. Because something's happening again. The park lights flicker. The soil won't settle. People are hearing things. Tom stepped forward. The ground's cursed. You shouldn't have touched it. He pointed at my hands, the ones that had been digging. The faint oily residue from last night was still there. Only now, it shimmered under the light. Margaret closed the box and slid it toward me. You started this, Ryan. You'll help us finish it. I laughed nervously. I didn't start anything. She leaned closer. Yes, you did. The ground only reacts to whoever disturbs it. Her voice trembled slightly, the first crack in her perfect HOA mask. Tom looked at me with something between pity and fear. You'll hear them soon, he said quietly. The whispers. I shook my head. You people are insane. I grabbed my jacket and stormed out, slamming the clubhouse door behind me. But as I crossed the park, I heard it. A soft giggle. Then another. Children's laughter, faint, echoing from under the ground. I froze. Every hair on my arms stood up. The soil in the center of the park rippled, just once, like something breathing beneath it. I ran home, locked every door, closed every curtain. But that night, when I tried to sleep, I could still hear it. A child's voice whispering my name. And when I woke up the next morning, there was dirt under my fingernails again. If you heard children laughing under your yard, would you dig deeper or move out that same night? I tried to tell myself it was a dream, that I hadn't really heard laughter coming from under the park. But the dirt under my fingernails said otherwise. The next morning, I scrubbed my hands raw. No matter how much soap I used, the smell wouldn't go away, that strange mix of rust, rainwater, and something older. I didn't go to work. I couldn't. I just sat by the window, staring at the park through the blinds. It looked perfectly normal, a few kids on scooters, a mom pushing a stroller, sunlight bouncing off the metal slide. But beneath that calm surface, I knew something was wrong. Every few minutes, a crow landed on the grass near the sunken patch. And every time, it pecked once, then flew off screaming. By noon, I decided to walk over, just to prove to myself it was all in my head. When I stepped onto the grass, the air felt heavier, like stepping into a room full of whispers. I bent down and touched the dirt. It was warm. That's when I heard Margaret's voice behind me. Ryan. I turned. She was wearing sunglasses, even though the sky was cloudy. Tom stood a few feet behind her, shovel in hand again. You didn't sleep, did you? She asked. How'd you know? She smiled slightly. No one does. Not after touching it. I wanted to laugh it off, but her tone made my stomach twist. What is it, Margaret? What's buried there? She didn't answer. Instead, she took a manila envelope from her bag and handed it to me. Read this. But not here. Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, Tom following like a shadow. I went home, locked the door, and opened the envelope. Inside were photocopies of old property records, names, dates, signatures, and one black and white photo. It showed a little girl, maybe 6 years old, standing in front of what looked like the same park, except instead of grass, there were rows of small wooden crosses. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, it said, Warren Family Memorial Ground, 1974. My throat tightened. The park used to be a graveyard, and the HOA had built right over it. I turned the photo over. On the back, someone had written, Do not disturb the soil. I dropped the picture. My hands were shaking. Everything made sense now, the digging, the secrecy, the doll. But if it was that serious, why didn't anyone ever say anything? I decided to call the county records office. After 10 minutes of transfers, a tired-sounding clerk picked up. "Hi, yeah," I said, trying to sound calm. "I'm calling about the property that used to belong to the Warren family. The one that's now a community park." There was silence on the line. Then the clerk said, "Sir, that lot's been sealed since '79. No public access." "Sealed? What do you mean sealed?" "I mean destroyed," he said flatly. "Bodies exhumed. Land repurposed." "But—" He hesitated. "But what?" "There's no record of where the remains went. The file ends there." I hung up. Outside, the sky darkened even though it was only afternoon. Storm clouds rolled in faster than I'd ever seen. Then my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Ryan." No name. No emoji. Just that. I felt my pulse hammer in my throat. Whoever sent it knew I'd been asking questions. I shut the blinds, checked the locks again. Then, against every ounce of common sense, I looked back out the window. Margaret was standing across the street, umbrella in hand, watching my house. I stepped back quickly. A thunderclap rattled the windows. The lights flickered, once, twice, then went out completely. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the breaker panel. When I opened it, something fell out, a folded note taped to the inside. In messy handwriting, it said, "Don't let them bury you too." My stomach dropped. I called out, "Who's there?" But the house was silent except for the rain pounding the roof. I ran upstairs to check the window again. Margaret was gone. Only the park remained, glowing faintly under the storm's lightning flashes. The soil patch looked bigger now, spreading. That night, I couldn't stop hearing the laughter again. It came from inside the walls this time, faint, playful giggles that moved from room to room. Then, a knock at the door. I froze. Another knock. Slow. Rhythmic. I peeked through the peephole. No one there. But when I opened the door, there was a small, muddy footprint on the porch. Child-sized. There. And next to it, that same wooden doll, the one from the box. I jumped back, slamming the door shut. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my phone. When I picked it up again, there was a voicemail, time-stamped 2 minutes earlier. The voice was Margaret's. "Ryan, don't panic. The board will handle it. Just stay inside. And whatever happens, don't clean the dirt." Her voice cracked at the end before the message cut off. I sat there in the dark for hours, the flashlight trembling in my hand, staring at that doll through the window. The rain stopped just before dawn. When I finally stepped outside, the doll was gone. But something else was waiting, a small HOA notice taped to my door. Violation, unauthorized digging activity. Fine $200. I actually laughed, a short, hysterical laugh that felt more like a cough. They were fining me for uncovering their secret. But inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't about rules anymore. Something under that park was awake. And it knew my name. If your HOA fined you right after you uncovered their buried secret, would you fight them or pack your bags before nightfall? By morning, the whole neighborhood felt wrong. Birds weren't singing. Sprinklers stayed off. Even the air smelled like rain and metal. I tried pretending everything was normal, until I saw the email. Subject, Emergency HOA Meeting, Attendance Required. Time, tonight, 8 p.m. Location, Clubhouse Basement. Basement. We'd never had a meeting down there before. I almost deleted it, but something about those words, attendance required, made my stomach knot. If I didn't show, they'd come knocking again, and I couldn't handle another midnight visit. So at 7:55 p.m., I walked to the clubhouse. The parking lot was half empty. Rain misted down, coating the asphalt in a slick mirror of streetlights. Inside, the main hall was dark. Only a single bulb glowed over the stairwell leading down. A voice called from below. "Ryan, we're waiting." "Margaret." I took the steps slowly, every creak echoing like a warning. The basement smelled like mold and paper, old meeting minutes, forgotten decorations, broken chairs. A round table stood in the center, lit by one overhead lamp. Around it sat 5 board members. Margaret at the head. Tom beside her, eyes shadowed. No one smiled. "Glad you made it," Margaret said. "We need to discuss the incident." Saturday, you mean the box? The doll? The voices? No reaction. Only the hum of the bulb above us. Margaret folded her hands. "You violated Section 9 of the Grounds Preservation Act," she said flatly. "Unauthorized disturbance of community soil." I laughed. "Are you serious? You people buried a child's doll and now you're threatening me with a fine." Tom slammed his palm on the table. "This isn't a joke." The bulb flickered. Somewhere in the corner, water dripped, steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Margaret leaned forward. "That box was meant to stay underground. It sealed an agreement. When you unearthed it, you reopened something we promised never to touch." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "Promised who?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "The Warrens. The family you buried." "No." Her eyes lifted slowly to mine. "The family that never left." The light buzzed louder. One of the other board members, a bald man I'd seen mowing his lawn at 6 a.m. every day, cleared his throat. "They owned this entire development once," he said. "When we built over their land, we had problems. Lights failing, tools disappearing, construction accidents. So we made a deal." "What kind of deal?" I asked. Tom whispered, "Keep their daughter's things buried, and they'd let us live here in peace." I laughed again, but it came out shaky. "You're telling me my HOA runs on a ghost contract?" No one laughed back. Margaret pushed a folder toward me. Inside were dozens of handwritten notes, all signed by former residents, each one confirming the same line. "I accept the soil." "What does that mean?" I asked. Tom looked at me. "It means every homeowner agrees to be part of the ground. To maintain balance." I pushed the folder away. "You people have lost your minds." Margaret's tone hardened. "You dug. The soil marked you. You're part of it now whether you like it or not." The bulb flickered again, brighter this time, then exploded. Glass scattered across the table. In the dark, someone gasped. Then a small giggle echoed from under the floorboards. Children's laughter. Tom's flashlight clicked on, his hands trembling. The light swept across the room, walls streaked with moisture, and handprints. Small ones. Muddy. Everywhere. Margaret whispered, "They're awake." Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut above us. I ran to it, locked. "Open it!" I shouted. Margaret's voice rose. "Don't. If you break the seal." But I already had my shoulder against the door. It burst open with a crack, and a gust of cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of wet earth. When I looked back, the basement was empty. No board members. No table. Nothing. Only dirt on the floor where they'd been sitting. I stumbled outside, rain soaking my clothes. Every window in the clubhouse was dark except one, the basement. A faint light glowed again, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then my phone buzzed. Another unknown text. "You let them out." I froze. The next morning, the park was taped off with yellow plastic. The sign read, "Maintenance, wet grounds." But the soil patch was wider now, almost swallowing the playground edge. Neighbors whispered about sinkholes. Margaret was nowhere to be seen. I decided to check the clubhouse. It was locked, but I knew a side window that never latched properly. Inside, the basement door was open. I crept down, phone light shaking in my hand. Where the table once stood, there was now a hole, deep, dark, and lined with roots. A soft humming came from below, a tune, like a child singing to herself. I leaned closer. "Hello." The singing stopped. Then, whispering, my name. "Ryan." I stumbled back, phone slipping from my fingers, its light spinning wildly across the dirt floor. Something moved in the shadows, a small hand, pale and muddy, reaching up through the soil. I ran. Outside, I collapsed on the grass, gasping for air. My palms were covered in dirt again. And when I looked down, the same oily shimmer. That night, I left a voicemail for Margaret. I don't know what you people did, but it's not staying buried anymore. No response. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed again, a video message. It was grainy, recorded from inside the park. Margaret's voice whispered, "We're trying to seal it. Stay inside." Behind her, the soil erupted, like something beneath had exhaled. Then the video cut off. I stared at the black screen, heartbeat thundering in my ears. Somewhere outside, sprinklers turned on for the first time in days, spraying water over the park's dark soil, and something under it moved again. If your HOA held a meeting in a basement that wasn't supposed to exist, would you stay to hear the truth, or run before the lights went out? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that humming again, the same soft childlike tune echoing through my walls. I tried to convince myself it was just the pipes, or maybe wind slipping through the attic vents. But deep down, I knew the sound wasn't coming from inside my house. It was coming from under it. At sunrise, I walked to the park. The maintenance tape was gone, replaced by a new sign. Closed indefinitely, structural hazard. The ground looked worse than before, cracked, uneven, like something massive had pressed upward during the night. The playground slide had tilted sideways. One swing moved even though there was no wind. And the soil in the center pulsed, barely, but enough to see. Like breathing. I stood there, frozen, until I heard a car pull up behind me. Tom got out, his usual grim face now pale, eyes bloodshot. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I could say the same," I replied. He looked at the ground, then at me. "You opened it. Now it wants balance." "What does that even mean?" I asked. "What is it?" He rubbed his hands over his face. "Do you remember the blueprints we used for the community?" "Not really." He nodded slowly. "The developer didn't tell anyone, but before this was built, the Warrens owned a private cemetery here. Just 12 plots. The county moved most of the graves, but not all of them." The words hit me like a punch. "So you built over." He cut me off. "Over what couldn't be moved. Over what didn't want to move." A shiver crawled down my neck. "Then why bury the doll?" Tom's voice trembled. "Because it belonged to her. Their daughter. She was the last to die, and the first to come back." He pointed toward the pulsing soil. "That's where her coffin was. We used to hear her crying from underground during construction. So we made a pact. Bury her things, seal the ground, keep it fed." I frowned. "Fed?" Tom looked up, his expression empty. "Every 3 years. One offering." I stepped back. "An offering?" He nodded. "A homeowner goes missing. Always ruled an accident. Always covered by the board." My stomach dropped. "That's what happened to Linda. The woman before me." Tom didn't deny it. "She fought the HOA. She tried to dig. The soil took her instead." He leaned closer. "She's awake now because of you." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "If you want to live, don't go near that park after dark." I didn't look back. That night, rain hammered the neighborhood. I sat in my living room, every light on, the TV playing just for noise. Thunder rolled overhead, long, low, heavy. Then, during one flash of lightning, I saw something move outside my window. A shadow. Small. Standing on the lawn, watching me. I moved closer. It looked like a child, a little girl in a white dress, drenched in mud. Her hair clung to her face. She lifted one hand and pointed toward the park. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. When I blinked, she was gone. But muddy footprints now led from my front yard, all the way to my door. I called the police. By the time they arrived, the rain had washed everything away. The officer, new guy, maybe 25, looked bored. "Sir, are you sure it wasn't just some kids?" "Kids don't leave footprints that deep," I said. He shrugged. "Well, if it happens again, call us." He left, and I was alone again. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed, another video. It was from a number I didn't recognize. When I opened it, I nearly dropped the phone. The camera was aimed at my house. From across the street. You could see me inside, pacing near the window. And then the camera turned, slowly, toward the park. A figure stood at the edge of the hole, half buried, motionless. It was Margaret. Her eyes were open, staring blankly into the dark soil. Her lips moved like she was whispering something, but there was no sound. Then, suddenly, her head jerked up and she smiled. The screen went black. I threw on my coat and ran outside, barefoot, rain pelting my face. By the time I reached the park, the hole was larger, deeper. Margaret's red coat was lying in the mud. But she was gone. Only her clipboard remained, soaked and bent. The papers inside were smeared, but one line was still visible. Offering accepted. I backed away, trembling. The ground rippled. Then something small surfaced, a porcelain face, cracked and covered in mud. The doll. Its eyes opened. I fell backward, scrambling away as the soil began to heave like a living thing. Shapes moved beneath, arms, shoulders, faces pressing against the surface. Whispers filled the air, too many voices, all saying the same word. Stay. I ran home, slammed the door, locked it twice. But when I turned around, muddy footprints stretched across my floor, leading from the door, to the hallway, to my bedroom. My hands shook as I grabbed a flashlight and followed the trail. The prints stopped at my bedroom door. It was half open. Inside, the light flickered, my lamp struggling to stay on. On my bed sat the doll. Dry now. Clean. Smiling. There was a note beside it, written on the back of Margaret's HOA letterhead. In shaky handwriting. Next offering due. I dropped the paper. That's when my phone buzzed again. Another message. From Tom. Don't fight it. Once you're chosen, it's easier if you don't run. I threw my phone against the wall. The lamp burst. And in that darkness, I heard her voice again, right behind me this time. Ryan, it's your turn. The floorboards creaked. The air turned cold. And then, fingers, small and freezing, brushed against the back of my neck. I don't remember how I got out. Maybe I blacked out, maybe I ran. But I woke up outside, in my car, parked halfway down the street, engine still running. My house lights were all off. The park, though, glowed faintly under the moonlight. I could see movement in the dirt again, slow, rhythmic. Breathing. Then I noticed something new. Right at the edge of the hole, a fresh wooden sign stood. New resident. Ryan. Plot 13. And below it, my signature. Signed in black ink. Except I hadn't signed anything. If you found your name written on a grave that hasn't been dug yet, would you run, or start wondering who's holding the shovel? I didn't go home for 2 days. I parked at a gas station off the highway, slept in the car, tried not to think about the park, the doll, or that sign with my name on it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Margaret's red coat sinking deeper into the mud. But eventually, I had to go back. Because when I checked my phone, there were 12 missed calls. All from Tom. No voicemails. Just missed calls, all between 3 o'clock and 3:15 a.m. By morning, the news spread through the neighborhood. Margaret's missing. The HOA sent out a newsletter, just like they always do. Cheerful header, bland tone. Our beloved president, Margaret Hill, has taken an unexpected leave of absence. The board assures residents that all park renovations and community projects will continue as scheduled. Like nothing happened. No mention of the mud. No mention of the rain. No mention of her red coat found near the hole. It made my stomach twist. They were covering it up, again. I drove back to my house just before sunset. Everything looked too perfect. Lawns freshly mowed. Mailboxes polished. Even the park sign had been replaced. The new one read, "Welcome to Serenity Green Park." Cute. Clean. Like the nightmare never happened. But the dirt still looked wrong. Too dark. Too heavy. And the swings were still moving, even with no wind. I unlocked my door and stepped inside. The air smelled like damp soil. My couch was covered in dust, or maybe dried mud. And in the corner, next to my bookshelf, sat a brand new HOA folder. No one had a key to my house. The folder was labeled, "Special Meeting, Attendance Required." Inside was a single paper. "Dear resident, you are hereby invited to a confidential emergency board session. Attendance is mandatory. Failure to appear will result in forfeiture of property rights under HOA Clause 9.3b. Location: Serenity Green Park. Time: midnight." At the bottom, there was a signature, "Margaret Hill," written in red ink. I stared at it for a long time. Her handwriting was shaky, but it was hers. I don't know what made me go. Curiosity, fear, or maybe that same force in the ground pulling me closer again. At 11:59, I walked toward the park. The street was silent, too silent. Every porch light was off except mine. As I got closer, I saw them, 6 people standing in a circle. Tom was there. So were the other board members, all wearing raincoats and gloves, even though the sky was clear. In the center of their circle was the hole. Wider now. Deeper. Steam rose from it like breath in the cold. Margaret wasn't there, but her clipboard was placed neatly on a folding chair. Tom looked up when he saw me. "You came," he said quietly. "I didn't have a choice." He nodded. "None of us do anymore." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the hole. The rest of the board hummed something, low, rhythmic, almost like a chant. The same tune I'd heard humming in my walls. Then Tom said, "It's your turn." "My turn for what?" He swallowed hard. "To make peace." He handed me a small wooden box, old, soaked with mud. It was warm. Inside, wrapped in fabric, was the porcelain doll. Her eyes flicked open. I dropped it instantly, stumbling back. The board didn't react, they just kept chanting. Tom's voice broke. "She won't stop until you finish it." I glared at him. "Finish what?" He looked at the ground. "You have to rebury it. Yourself. The offering only ends when the chosen one gives it back." I shook my head. "No. I'm done playing your sick ritual." But before I could leave, the earth shifted. The ground beneath us buckled, split, and something pale and small crawled up from the mud. It was a hand. A child's hand. The chanting stopped. Everyone froze. The hand reached out further, gripping the edge of the hole. Then a face followed, small, cracked, covered in soil. Her eyes were open, but lifeless. She looked straight at me. And then she smiled. I heard Margaret's voice echo across the park, soft, distant, coming from below. "She's yours now." The others turned and walked away, leaving me alone with that thing crawling toward me. I tried to back up, but my legs felt heavy. The ground pulled at my feet like it didn't want me to leave. She crawled closer. Mud dripping from her fingers. Her mouth moved, forming words I couldn't hear, until suddenly I could. "You took my place." The ground exploded upward, a rush of cold air and the smell of rot. Hands, dozens of them, reached from below, grabbing at my ankles, my arms, my clothes. I screamed and kicked free, falling onto my back. The doll's cracked face hovered inches from mine. She whispered, "Give me back." Then, all at once, everything went still. The air, the ground, the sound. Only my heartbeat pounded in my ears. The doll lay motionless again. The hole closed over itself, like it had never been there. And all around me, the board members were gone. No lights, no footsteps. Just silence. I grabbed the doll and ran home, shaking, muddy, half out of my mind. When I got inside, my phone buzzed again. A message. No name. Just words. "The board will reconvene tomorrow. Thank you for your service." Attached was a photo, me, standing in the park, holding the doll. Taken from behind. Someone was watching. I didn't go to work. Didn't leave my house. Every sound made me jump. By evening, I checked my mailbox and found another HOA notice. "Special congratulations. Ryan has been promoted to interim HOA president." What? They had replaced Margaret. With me. The letter ended with a handwritten line. Welcome back to the soil. That night, I heard the humming again, this time coming from the park and my house. Two voices, overlapping, getting louder. Then, from my kitchen, a thud, followed by a child's laughter. When I turned the corner, the doll sat on the counter. No mud, no cracks. Her dress was now clean and white. Next to her was a piece of paper. On it, the names of the remaining board members. All crossed out. Except mine. At the bottom. Meeting adjourned. I picked up the doll. She blinked. And I swear, I heard her whisper, "President Ryan." If the HOA made you president overnight, but you knew they buried their last one, would you accept the job? The next morning, I woke up to sunlight. For the first time in days, it felt like everything was back to normal. The birds were out. The lawns were green. And across the street, my neighbors waved like nothing had ever happened. For a second, I thought maybe it hadn't. Maybe everything, the park, the doll, Margaret, was just some insane, sleep-deprived hallucination. But then I saw it. A small envelope slid halfway under my front door. No name. Just a red wax seal, the same one on every HOA letter. Inside was a single line of text. Your first meeting as president begins tonight. Attendance is mandatory. I sat there staring at it for a long time. Then, without even realizing it, I said out loud, "No." But my voice cracked, because deep down, I knew the HOA never accepted no. By evening, I heard them outside. Soft knocks on doors. Footsteps in unison. The faint hum of that same haunting tune weaving through the neighborhood. When I looked out the window, I saw the board members, the ones who'd disappeared. They were walking from house to house, carrying clipboards and shovels. Their faces were pale, drained. Their eyes, empty. And each time they passed a home, a porch light flickered off. One by one. Until only mine was left. Then someone knocked. 3 soft taps. Then a pause. Then 3 more. I froze. The same pattern I'd heard on the night they buried something under the park. The doorknob turned by itself. The door creaked open. And there she was. Margaret. Her red coat was perfectly clean. Her lipstick flawless. But her skin, pale like clay. And her eyes, hollow. "Good evening, President Ryan," she said softly. "You're late." I backed away. "You're dead." She smiled. Dead is such a dramatic word. We prefer committed. Behind her, the rest of the board filed in, silent, smiling, holding papers. Tom was among them, his face blank. Margaret placed a folder on my kitchen counter. "Agenda for tonight's meeting," she said. Inside were 3 bullet points. "Welcome new members. Complete unfinished business. Choose the next offering." I shoved the papers away. "I'm done with your games." Margaret tilted her head. "Games? You think maintaining order in this neighborhood is a game?" The walls trembled. The hum began again, louder this time, vibrating through the floor. From outside, the sound of digging echoed. I ran to the window. All across the park, neighbors, dozens of them, were standing in their yards, motionless, staring at the hole. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Margaret's voice came from behind me. "Do you know why the HOA was formed, Ryan?" I turned slowly. She stepped closer, her heels leaving wet prints on my wooden floor. "Control. Structure. Balance. This neighborhood was built on peace, and peace requires sacrifice." She gestured toward the park. "It's how we keep things buried." Her words echoed, buried. I glanced back outside. The dirt was moving again, rising, like something was pushing from underneath. Margaret smiled. "You've done well. The soil has chosen you." I shook my head, backing away. "I didn't choose any of this." "You did when you watched us dig," she said calmly. "Curiosity is consent." The lights flickered. My phone buzzed, another text from an unknown number. "Finalize the offering. Midnight deadline." I dropped it. My breath quickened. Margaret stepped closer. Her voice softened. "It's easy, Ryan. All you have to do, is sign. She handed me a pen, long, thin, black. At the bottom of the page, the line read, "Next resident, TBD." I looked up. "Who?" She smiled wider. "That's for you to decide, President." Then she pointed out the window. Across the street, my neighbor's porch light flickered on. It was Amanda, the one who always complained about my trash cans. She waved politely, unaware of anything happening. Margaret leaned close, whispering, "She's been very non-compliant lately." I felt the pen in my hand. Cold. Heavy. And for a moment, I almost did it. Almost. But then I saw something behind Margaret. In the reflection of the window, a small figure, standing in my hallway. The doll. Its head tilted. Its eyes wide open. And for the first time, it wasn't looking at me. It was looking at her. Margaret froze. The board members turned. The humming stopped. The doll raised one porcelain arm and pointed. Margaret's smile faded. Her voice cracked. "No, not me." The ground outside erupted, a roar, a quake, a wind that shattered glass and ripped through the street. Screams filled the air as the earth split open beneath the park. Light, blinding, orange, and alive, poured from the ground. Margaret's body convulsed. Her skin cracked like dried paint. And from within her chest, mud spilled out, thick and black. She fell backward, gasping. The board members dropped to their knees, hands over their ears. The doll turned its head toward me. Its voice echoed, layered, like 100 whispers. Balance restored. Then it shattered, breaking into pieces that scattered across the floor. The noise stopped. The ground sealed. Silence. I don't remember much after that. When I woke up, the sun was rising. The park looked brand new. No hole. No mud. No damage. Kids were playing on the swings again. Margaret's house was empty. Tom's truck was gone. No one in the neighborhood mentioned the meeting. They just smiled and waved, like every other perfect morning. On my doorstep sat a small box. Inside, the HOA gavel, a brass nameplate, and a note that read, "Welcome, President Ryan. Keep the peace." I should have left. Sold the house. Run. But I didn't. Because when I walked outside, everyone waved to me, friendly, warm, like I belonged. And for the first time, I realized, maybe I did. Maybe the HOA wasn't just a nightmare. Maybe it was a system, one that needed someone like me to keep it steady. The wind blew gently through the park. The soil looked calm again. Peaceful. And then I saw it, half buried near the swing set. A porcelain smile. One single, cracked eye peeking out from the dirt. Watching me. That night, I sat at Margaret's old desk. The same clipboard. The same folder. And the same form waiting for a signature. I picked up the pen. At the top, it said, "Next offering nomination." I looked at the list of names. My neighbors, my friends, all smiling in their perfect houses. And at the very bottom, my own. I took a deep breath. And drew a line through it. Then I wrote a new name. Homeowners Association. By morning, the entire board had vanished. Their houses stood empty, blinds open, front doors unlocked. The park was still. Peaceful. I stood at my window, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. For once, the neighborhood was quiet. Almost too quiet. Then my phone buzzed. A new message. "Congratulations, Ryan. You've served your term." Attached, a photo. Of the park. A new sign had been installed overnight. It read, "Margaret Hill Memorial Park, President Forever." And right below it, a smaller plaque. "Next in line, Ryan." I stared at it for a long time. Then, faintly, beneath the ground, the soil shifted again. Like something smiling beneath the surface. I whispered under my breath, "Boo HOA." And the wind whispered back, "Welcome home." If you inherited a perfect neighborhood, but it demanded a soul every year to stay perfect, would you protect it or burn it all down?